couldn't even get the date right when I started trying to do a video. I was back in 2009. Anyway, my videos are all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour, and my addictive substance was alcohol, my behaviour just as addictive over the years: work, relationships, collecting, materialism, trying to look right, trying to be right, a very trying person sometimes, because I was always striving for perfection. And whenever anybody asked me to do something or asked me to be involved, I was there because I kept saying yes. And it probably got me into all sorts of scrapes along the way, but it did actually make me strive very hard and work very hard. And I did manage to do 2 careers fairly successfully before I fell off my perch. And what happened? Well, I just got exhausted by trying to be whatever people thought I ought to be, and what I thought I ought to be. I strived and strived and strived, and inside there was still a hole in the soul, as it's called, and in there was most likely fear. But it took me a long time to understand what fear was. It had always been there, but I didn't really have a name for it, other than the imagined fear of people knowing me too well. So I guess along the way, fear of intimacy in terms of emotional and physical. But of course drink got me out of that fairly quickly. It made me able to be convivial, joyful, behave, I suppose, as I thought I ought to behave, to be able to be intimate in some sort of way. But the next day or the next week or the next month, there was always a fear of not being good enough. So what do? We keep on going with drink, relationships, work, until we can't find out who we are, or we never really get to understand what's inside us and what that gap is for. And it's not to be filled with things which are superficial and indifferent, which is where I got stuck, because deep down there was a very wounded person, not really sure whether there was any point in being on the planet at all. I thought if I looked right I'd be okay, but it turned out that it wasn't good enough to be superficial and indifferent. And these days I take the words of my father on his deathbed. He didn't say, "Son, I've got some advice for you." He said, "This is the way I treated your mother, and it wasn't very good." He said, "I didn't cherish her enough, and I was superficial and indifferent to life and myself, which meant I could be no other way with other people." And yet he loved us all, and we loved him, even though he was a scoundrel, a rogue, and a bit of a reprobate. He had a very lonely life because he was stuck in the malady of alcohol all his life. So we learn, and it took me a few years after that, the devastation of the loss of a parent is bad enough, and to be drinking on top and not really understand what grief is, and that grief continues because it's a part of life once it's happened to us, and it can deepen us and enable us to find how to cherish people and how to love them. But drink got in the way for a good few years after, and it took me a while to understand, having broken down completely and being in an anxiety state for 2 years, what life was about. It wasn't about drinking, and it took me a long time to get there. So what helped me along the way? It was family, friends, community, professionals who played their part in keeping me alive long enough to get a moment of clarity. And I don't know how many rock bottoms I had along the way, but there were quite a few, and I won't go into that now. But that moment of clarity was, I cannot get out of this on my own. You know, all the self-will, all the stiff upper lip, putting on a brave face, all the soldiering on as we do, covering up what's inside, because there's nothing there, or rather unused feelings, suppressed feelings, and a person still yet to be born in a strange sort of way. So reborn again, maybe. Sounds a bit too dramatic, but it's probably true. And what helped me keep into recovery? Well, I got to a fellowship called AA. I was a very poor student. I didn't take on board the ideas straight away. I was cynical, intellectual, and thinking my way through what I thought my recovery could be. And that was said last night at a meeting. Thinking my recovery, none on self-will, run riot. because I still thought I was running the show. I was the puppet master behind the puppet, and I was the puppet. So fellowship keeps me on track, one day at a time. That's Alcoholics Anonymous, full of unique, authentic people. Not special or different, just unique and authentic, like the rest of humanity. On the road of happy destiny, or trudging on a road with potholes in it too. So what about AA? How does it help me? Well, I share the statement of intent here, or the AA preamble shared at every meeting I go to, and it reads like this. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And we do that by sharing our experience, strength and hope with each other. And I do it here on YouTube and Facebook and other places, because I was asked to, and for people who can't get to meetings. And just generally helps me settle myself down into a day. And you know, the gift is, in recovery, we have to grieve the person we were, and we have to grieve the loss of our best friend often, which is the drug of choice, alcohol for me, or behaviour, work, relationships. Stop being indifferent and superficial, and try and find out what the depth of cherishing is all about. So that's a journey, and it starts with step 1, which is January for me, all about being powerless over alcohol, and life is unmanageable when drinking. And I prefer not to drink on a daily basis. So I've strung a few days together. And the gift is, as we come out of grief in the anger, frustration and depression side, we get new opportunities. And that grieving process it doesn't just go forwards, it goes backwards, because we do remember and we do realise just how much damage we've done to ourselves and probably the people around us. So there is work to be done in that area, of acknowledging all that. But step 1 is where it starts, and that's what Jerry's all about in the literature in this book, Daily Reflections. And for January 23rd, January being all about step 1, having fun yet? We aren't a glum lot. If newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want it. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. Or we absolutely insist on acknowledging when it's sad as well. We try not to indulge in cynicism over the state of the nations, nor do we carry the world's troubles on our shoulders, because it's very easy to deflect. The world's going to pot. Or it went to pot and then came into recovery, hopefully. When my own house is in order, I find the different parts of my life are more manageable. Stripped from the guilt and remorse that cloaked my drinking years, I am free to assume my proper role in the universe. But this condition requires maintenance. I should stop and ask myself, am I having fun yet? If I find answering that question difficult or painful, perhaps I am taking myself too seriously and finding it difficult to admit that I've strayed from my practice of working the program to keep my house in order. I think the pain I experience is one way my higher power has to get my attention, coaxing me to take stock of my performance. The slight time and effort it takes to work the program, a spot check inventory on a daily basis, for example, or the making of amends, whatever is appropriate, are well worth the effort. And the gift really is clean living, being open, honest and willing to change my attitude and behaviour on a daily basis, and admitting when I'm wrong, because in vulnerability and admission is the room for growth. And that serenity prayer to acceptance always helps me. So when I say to God or good conscience, depending on how I'm feeling, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference is, for me, always just for today. It's all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. My substance, alcohol, so a recovering alcoholic. My behaviour, most of that time, trying to be perfect, and never so. And I need to remind myself always, it's progress, not perfection, in the program of the Fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't speak for AA, I just speak for myself and what it's done for me. And on a daily basis, it seems to restore me to sanity. It's like all the 12 steps of the 12-step action program. They only work if we have life experience which requires the need to do something. And on most days I do need to do something to improve my outlook. And the other thing is the program is designed to take us from the problem to the solution. And sometimes the solution can be elusive on a day-by-day basis, but if we're working incrementally, just a little bit at a time each day, we can certainly improve our life and our lifestyle and our connection to the world and what's going on. And I'm a bit disorganised. I tidied up so I can't find anything. The preamble, which is shared at the beginning of every AA meeting, goes like this, and it really highlights what AA is there to do and what it's not there to do. So AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So that is it really, what AA is there to do. It's there to keep us sober, or help us keep sober on a day-by-day basis. And many people have their own understanding of what AA is for them, and I need not meddle with other people's idea of what AA is. We all come to understand how life is and how we can make ourselves okay in the day. So fellowship works for me. I don't need an organisation which is there telling me to do something, and I don't need an organisation trying to fix me, because if I try and get an organisation to fix me, I'm not doing the work. I'm not doing the work of what is required, and that is for me to keep on looking at the solution and not live in the problem as it was. So it's some years since I was in the problem of drink, but it doesn't actually go away. What I need to do is make sure that the behaviour I had then I don't repeat again, and the repetitive behaviour which caused me to have anxiety states, a nervous breakdown, loss of a career or two, probably 3, was simply I could not stop drinking, and I could not make my life work in any, I suppose, ongoing way. Yeah, I kept on changing. I would please people. I would do things which people asked me to do. I would take on burdens which were inexplicably hard and try and find a solution. And all the time I was relying on something to take the edge off behind it all, and I didn't know I was doing that. And sometimes we have to get to a place of denial before we know that something is wrong. So my drinking career, 35 years long, 2 successful careers, averaged 2 successful I would say, and all the time not realising that alcohol was my best friend, taking the edge off all those things I was missing out on maybe by doing things for other people, and getting a sense of worth and value from being useful, but actually not very useful to me and my life. And I guess those formative years in my teens, when I started to do things for other people and put other people first always, meant that I never really understood what I was here to do, and that is simply to live life, be a part of, be equal to, no bigger, no smaller than anybody else. So I'm just learning on a daily basis what it's like to be able to make some choices, simple choices to make life work. And it's so easy to get stuck in old behaviour, old feelings, old ways of looking at life, that it's done something to me and I have no control. Having said that, the whole program and step 1 is about being powerless over alcohol, and life is unmanageable if we drink. So now I don't drink, and life is less unmanageable, it's more manageable, with some simple choices on a daily basis, based on having a sober head, and that's emotional, spiritual, and that is all it does for me, the fellowship, apart from provide me with many friends and many understandings which I never had before. So it's all about learning wisdom, and to help me with wisdom, this book, Daily Reflections, an AA literature book, and As Bill Sees It, are 2 of the bits of literature I use to, I suppose, give me a lift in the morning. And the other thing I say in the morning to myself is this: I am powerless over alcohol, people, places and things. They have their own entity, their own life, as it were, even inanimate things around me. I can't move them. But around that, I learn there are certain things I cannot change. I can have the courage to change a few things, which is to do with me, and the wisdom to know the difference. So it's an improving situation, hopefully, incrementally, day by day. So for January 23rd, in the Daily Reflections, it says, having fun yet. We aren't a glum lot. If newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want it. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. We try not to indulge in cynicism over the state of the nations, nor do we carry the world's troubles on our shoulders. And it's a bit of an eye-opener today. First time in I think it's 20 or 30 years that we are confirmed as being in recession. Is it 5 quarters? Things going wrong? Seems like a lot longer. But I have no power over that. So we only have power over our choices mainly, and we don't need to take the burden of the world on our shoulders, but we can keep on doing things which improve our own condition. So it goes on to say, when my house is in order, I find the different parts of my life are more manageable. Stripped from the guilt and remorse that cloaked my drinking years, I am free to assume my proper role in the universe. But this condition requires maintenance. I should stop and ask myself, am I having fun yet? If I find answering that question difficult or painful, perhaps I'm taking myself too seriously and finding it difficult to admit that I've strayed from my practice of working the program to keep my house in order. I think the pain I experience is one way my higher power has to get my attention, coaching me to take stock of my performance, the slight time and effort it takes to work the program, a spot check inventory, for example, or the making of amends, whatever is appropriate, are well worth the effort. And yeah, I do need to take a spot check inventory from time to time. And the other thing which I ask myself, which is about being assertive in my own life, which is how am I feeling, why, what can I do? So how am I feeling today? Well, not so troubled. Why? Because I've started to do 1 or 2 positive things, which is to look at my behaviour over the last few months and pick out those things which are working for me and those which aren't. So when I start to look at the solution to my problems or my situation today, I can do that spot check inventory and say, I'm alive. I do not drink on a daily basis. I can connect with the world as best I can, even if I am depressed in some way or other, whether it's reactive depression, which is to an event, which I have had in my life, more than one actually, and whether I can keep on looking for the good parts of life rather than getting stuck in the old parts of life. My old thinking meant I was really powerless over people, places and things in my life, and I was also powerless over my choices. So whilst I remain powerless over people, places and things because they are just what they are, my choices and my responses rather than my reactions help me get my house in order, just gently a day at a time. And I don't know if I've got time for Advil Caesar, but just very briefly, it says, all or nothing, page 6, or reading number 6. Acceptance and faith are capable of producing 100% sobriety. That's step 1. In fact, they usually do, and they must, else we could have no life at all. But the moment we carry these attitudes into our emotional problems, we find that only relative results are possible. Nobody can, for example, become completely free from fear, anger and pride. Hence in this life we shall attain nothing like perfect humility and love. So we shall have to settle respecting most of our problems for a very gradual progress punctuated sometimes by heavy setbacks. Our old-time attitude of all or nothing will have to be abandoned. And that's so true. All or nothing has caused me grief in the last few months. But if I actually say to myself and share that gradually, incrementally, things are improving because I'm understanding how I may react to life, then I can make life work, just this one day only.